ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MLG Finals Call of Duty Group Draw. Super excited. Benson joined by Max today for this. We've never done one of these before, so everyone in the office has a big buzz going around. Everyone excited to find out what the groups are going to be come finals.
Yeah, only about less than 2 weeks away from MLG Finals, 100th event in New Orleans, Louisiana. So much hype, $250,000 on the line in Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. How
it's crazy. The second biggest tournament of the year for all of our Call of Duty pros. Super stoked, super excited for them. Let's take a look as well, really briefly, exactly how that tournament is going to work. Of course, tournament format, pretty usual, nothing too crazy. The tournament will support as many as 112 teams, so there's going to be an open bracket there. 16 teams will be starting in pool play. 96 teams start in the open bracket. Simple maths there, to be honest. When 4 teams remain in the open bracket, in the winner's side, they will be placed into pool play. When 4 teams remain in the open losers bracket, they will be placed in championship bracket losers round 1, Max.
Yep, and then going on to tournament format number 2. Teams finishing first in their pool and second will be placed into the championship winners bracket quarterfinals. Teams finishing in their pool third will then be placed in the championship bracket losers round 3.
Yep.
Teams finishing in pool fourth place will be placed in the losers round 2. And then if you place fifth in a pool, you go into championship bracket losers round 1.
Right, and one of the big questions we've seen a lot of people talk about on social media is what is the exact format of the games? All pool play and championship losers bracket matches are a best of 5. Now, all championship winners and grand final matches are a best of 7 games, and I believe that also includes the losers bracket final there. And as you mentioned, a massive $250,000 total prize pool come MLG Finals. So excited. The second biggest tournament of the year. And I'm also very excited. Some of you guys may have already seen via social media that TP will be casting at MLG Finals with a lot of other people as well. We have TP on today's show. Teep, how are you doing today, my friend?
Pretty good, Ben. Super excited about this group draw and to be casting at Worlds. It's going to be my first time casting full-time at an event, so it's going to be a little bit new for me. A little bit sad I'm not competing this time, but I'll be back for Black Ops 3 stronger than ever.
Good. That's what we like to hear. But your casting voice has definitely been dubbed pretty godlike, so excited to be working with you come MLG Finals. But as you said, it's time to really kind of draw these groups, and group play, it's something that you've been a part of. You know, you're a veteran of Call of Duty esports. Is there any kind of long-lasting memory you have from group play, potentially? Anything funny has happened when you've been playing?
Pretty much, there's been a lot of times where we've had a very easy pool and a group of death. And the biggest thing about placing well in tournaments consistently is how you do in this sort of group play system. So it's all about staying in the winner bracket, right? It comes down to math. Each win you get in winner bracket, you move farther and farther up the standings. You have to stay in winner bracket if you want to get a good result. Fighting back from loser bracket, especially in a game like AW where we've seen some upsets more often than late, it's risky. You want to stay in the winner bracket, have those sort of losses to work with to get farther and farther up the tournament. But overall, one of the most memorable experiences from group play, I would say, is probably in Black Ops 1. There was a lot of like 3-way ties that would happen back in the day. So some of the things that we had to go through back then was a lot of fun to deal with. Map counts come into play, and all these sort of different things sort of build into your momentum. And it's all about getting that first win versus the most competitive team in your group. If you're able to take that team out, you're most likely going to win your group and probably have that momentum pushing on throughout the rest of the tournament.
Now, there's been some big questions about exactly how today's draw is going to work. Well, teams will be drafted from 4 tiers into groups. Each group will consist of 1 team from each tier. Tier 1 consists of teams number 1 through 4 from North America. Tier 2, teams 5 through 8 from North America. Tier 3, teams 9 through 12 from North America. And the Tier 4 teams are going to be our 4 international squads attending MLG Finals. So essentially, to break it down, every single group will have 1 team from each tier. Pretty simple stuff, I think, Max. Nothing too crazy going on with those groups. But, Tiff, you were talking briefly about Group of Death. What has been kind of your hardest group that you've ever been a part of, if you can remember?
Oh, that's a pretty tough one to remember, to be honest. But it had to have been... I want to say it was one of the Gfinities, where basically if you lose 1 game, you're pretty much... You're stressing out to get into the rest of the tournament. I don't really remember the hardest group we've ever had off the top of my head, but basically, group of deaths happen when there's 3 top teams in one group, and they're all sort of fighting with each other to get that map count advantage or just those wins overall. So if you're able to pull out that first one, that's the one that matters the most. That first match that sort of gives you that momentum. However, on the opposite side of the table, losing that first match against the other competitive team in the group, as I'd like to call it, is it's kind of a shocker. That's why group play is much different than bracket play. In bracket play, you can kind of set up how the rest of your tournament is to go, whereas
Right.
group play, you don't know where you're going to be placed in the bracket depending on how you're placing and how other teams are placing, so it's harder to prepare for teams, I guess, per se, but it's definitely a lot more fun for the viewer to watch to see how these teams place 1 and 2 or 3 in the group
Yep.
and how it sort of affects the rest of the tournament.
It's been interesting as well, as you kind of pointed out earlier on, Team. The upsets that we've seen in Advanced Warfare has been pretty crazy, especially when it's come down to group play. But we should introduce you now the teams within each tier. We'll start off with, of course, tier number 1, top 4 North American squads. No surprise here. You've got Optic Gaming, FaZe Clan, Denal Esports, and Team Elevate. Team, the obvious question here is to ask, which is the best team in that pool, or group rather. Is it going to be Optic Gaming, is it going to be FaZe? What I'm actually going to ask you, though, is between Denal and Elevate right now, who do you actually have as the strongest squad?
That's a pretty tough one, to be honest. We've seen a bunch of team changes go down, like we all figured was going to happen for the second biggest tournament in the year. But overall, out of those two teams, I just feel like I have to give it to Denial still. They've had the more consistent results throughout the rest of the year. They've been that sort of number 3-ish team, as I'd like to call it, for the majority of Advanced Warfare when, the whole champs roster diminished. So I guess I would give it to Denial, but Elevate picking up Octane, he was sort of, I guess I would call him the star player on Envy when he was there with that bow, and he's been very impressive throughout this whole year. But I do have to edge it out and give it to Denial just due to their past performances, and consistency is a thing for a reason. I think Denial's the more consistent roster out of those.
Yeah, that Red Rebellion Wolfpack matchup is going to be really exciting if we see it in bracket play.
Yeah, if we see it.
Because
Yeah,
obviously,
exactly.
Classic leaving Elevate to go to Denial, that'll be a really heated matchup if they meet in bracket play. But taking a look at our tier 2 teams, that is going to have Envious, TK, Optic Nation, and then Epsilon NA, the surprise team from Season 3 playoffs, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, this squad just played out of their mind. I mean, we did a whole kind of series on why Epsilon was so successful. I'm excited to see if they can continue that through to MLG Finals in a few weeks' time. Team, do you reckon they can do it? Can Epsilon carry that momentum through, or was it kind of a one-hit wonder of an event?
You really don't know. You just, throughout the whole year, we've seen the TR kids sort of band back together some way or another. So the acquisition of Aqua for Epsilon, I think, is going to help them. However, Royalty was sort of that unpredictable player on that team. Just from my experiences playing against them, Royalty was that guy that, he plays on a crazy high sensitivity, and he's the one that could sort of make or break a hard point for you and sort of just open up the map for you and your team. So I haven't really seen Epsilon play too much with Aqua since all these changes have gone down. But overall, it's... I have to say they're probably the second strongest team out of these tier 2 teams that we've listed, with I'd probably give Envy the number 1 spot in this second group, or second tier.
Makes sense. I would agree with that. Moving on to tier 3, though. This is where things get a little bit closer, I'd like to think. You got Orbit, you have Rise, you got Isolation, and you have XGN also making it into group play come finals. And kind of a similar question to what you were just asking or answering there, TP. In this tier 3, who in your mind actually is the strongest team? Is it Rise now, of course, picking up your long-time old former duo Aches? I mean, how strong is that team going to be now?
That's always the wild card with Pat. He's the one that's going to bring you up to the top 3 instantly, or you're just not going to do well. His motivation and what he brings to the team is either a lot or very little from what we've seen, especially this year, which has been way more dramatic than in years past. But overall, the teams in this tier, they all seem kind of weak in my opinion. Not trying to bash anyone. I mean, I guess the top 2 have to be Rise and ISO. They're the teams that have sort of had some good results against some of the other top teams. I just don't know if Orbit or XGN, even with changes that have been going on, are going to be able to make that push into the sort of upper tier that we haven't seen from those sort of squads yet. But I don't know. The second biggest event of the year, these are the kind of events where Ake shows up. If he does, Rise can be a contender for sure.
Yep, and obviously Orbit picking up Replays World Champion, Young Stars, TCM on that team as well. Always got to look out for T-Clan. But Tier 4, our final tier in group play, is going to consist of the Europeans and the Australian team. Team Infused, Team Vitality, Millennium, and then Citadel is going to be the Australian team. A team that, we didn't see at Champs.
Yeah, we don't really know too much about them, to be completely honest, but we know they're Australian. And we know Australians at big events always seem to turn up.
Mind Freak.
Yeah.
T1 Daughters.
Yep. They always seem to have great events, so I am keeping my eye out for those Australians. Between the Europeans, though, Infused, Vitality, and Millennium, is there one of those specific that you know potentially could come out and cause some upsets?
It's always tough to call, but we usually see at least one of these teams from the sort of international scene sort of break through and get a good placing. It's just really tough to say. I never know. I always try to guess the sort of dark horse team that I think is going to place well, and I'm always wrong. So I do think one of these teams could potentially sneak maybe into the top 6.
Okay.
But it's all about how they do in group play, right? If you start so early in the loser bracket, it's tough to just get those wins against so many strong teams in the loser bracket and build enough momentum, have enough in the tank to still compete against some of the top teams. So if it's going to happen, one of these teams needs to get 1 or 2 in the group. And with sort of how the tiers are lining up and all the teams we see, it's looking doubtful for them, to be quite honest.
I think they kind of need a little bit of lady luck. One of those top European teams or the Australians needs a group of death that they massively avoid, and they kind of get a blessed group. I think that's the best they can really hope for, first place or maybe second place finish. But kind of speaking of the groups, we actually have our tier 1 teams already placed and allocated into their ready groups. Group A will be led by Optic Gaming, so that's going to be the first team in Group A. Then Group B is going to be Team FaZe, Group C will be Denial, and Group D will be Elevate. As for Tier 2, 3, and of course Tier 4, we're going to be drawing them live, and I'm so excited to find out who falls where. Could we potentially have Team Envious in Optic Gaming's pool? Can they finally kind of get over that hurdle, something they've been struggling with? Maybe they'll Optic Nation versus Optic Gaming. That could be very exciting. I think that Tier 2 and Tier 3 for me is super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, all 4 of those teams are more than worthy of a #1 seed in a group. They can all top any group really easily without any really struggle there. But obviously, you kind of want to dodge OG and FaZe there.
You do. You definitely want to dodge that.
But
I'm praying for a group of death.
Exciting.
I'm just praying for a group of death. I'm going to be that guy. A lot of the players are watching, praying they avoid the group of death.
We get Pad in either Group A or B. There's going to be amazing games there regardless.
It's going to be insane. I'm super excited. For now, though, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we return, we're going to draw our Tier 2 teams. Be right back.